Hey guys, welcome back to another video. I've gotten a lot of questions recently from you guys about, whether or not you're ready to become a software engineer, whether or not you can start applying to jobs, right? You've been learning how to code for a while now and you have a couple of side projects and, can you start applying to real software engineering jobs and making that leap to a full-time developer? And there really is no right answer for that. But what I wanted to talk about today is, some signs that you're definitely not ready. Some signs that, you shouldn't apply to jobs just yet. And you should, maybe build out your portfolio a bit more, maybe practice some more coding, work on your interview skills, whatever it may be. But just some, small signs that maybe you shouldn't apply to jobs yet and you're not ready to make that leap. So if you're new to the channel, what we do here is we talk about software engineering at a high level, and I try to basically give you guys as much information as I can from my own experience so that you can make that leap and become a full-time software engineer. Whether you're a student right now or older and you're trying to switch career paths, I try to give you guys as much advice as I can so you can do the same as me and become a full-time software engineer. If you're new to the channel, feel free to like and subscribe, and if you're a returning subscriber, thank you very much. So what are some signs that you're not ready, right? Obviously, if you're not good at coding, if you haven't practiced coding enough and you haven't, really learned a language or two and worked on some side projects, you really shouldn't be applying to jobs just yet, especially if you have no experience in the field prior to that. But I want to get more specific and talk about get to the nitty gritty of why you shouldn't apply yet and some more detailed signs that you should look out for. So first and foremost, if you have a project that's kind of complex or like any kind of side project and you're unable to explain the ins and outs of how it works to anyone, then that's probably a sign that you're not ready to become a software engineer, right? If you're unable to explain how data is flowing throughout your app, where calls are being made, how different information is passed around, to another developer, and more importantly, to someone that's not technical, then you should really start working on that and try to, be able to explain specifically in different parts of your app what is happening and what the expected behavior should be. Another thing that I've realized a lot of people are uncomfortable with, especially when they're just learning how to code, is coding in front of other people. Right? If you're unable to, code in high pressure, maybe not high pressure, but code in front of someone else, with a time constraint and solve, maybe one question in 20 minutes with someone watching you, if you're unable to do that, then you're not really ready for technical interviews, right? Guys, as I've explained before, the skills required to pass a technical interview are completely different than the skills required on the job. The questions that you're going to receive in a technical interview, you're probably never going to use that kind of strategy or those kind of, algorithms and data structures, sorting a binary search tree, stuff like that. You're never really going to do that on the job. And so the skills that you need to learn to pass a technical interview are completely different than the skills that are required for you to succeed at your job. And so guys, if you haven't been practicing kind of lead code style questions where you go in and kind of have to solve a problem, if you haven't been practicing that a lot, or if you've never done that at all, then I think you're definitely not ready to be, to enter the job market and to start passing technical interviews, because you're going to realize very quickly that it's kind of overwhelming and you should really practice. That being said, one thing I've learned from a mentor in the past and from my experience is that the best way to practice for interviews is to just go through and do interviews yourself. In the past, something I've done, something that a mentor of mine has forced me to do was go through interviews, apply to different companies just so I can get better at doing interviews. Don't apply, apply to a couple of different jobs, and you don't have to have the goal of getting a job there. Your only goal is to practice interviews and get better. I promise you guys, if you go through 10 interviews a week, don't try to get the job, just do the interview and try to get better at coding challenges, at communicating with the person on the other side, and just getting more comfortable with yourself and more confident. If you do like 10 a week, I guarantee you're going to get a job in no time. That's the best way to practice for interviews, is to just do the interviews, right? It seems simple, but not a lot of people are doing that. And like I mentioned before, you really want to use leak code. You want to start practicing on leak code, because that really is one of the best ways to practice, right? You get a question, you solve it, and you move on. And you can move on to harder questions, easier questions, but I promise you, if you do 5 questions a day, while you're practicing for interviews, while you're doing interviews, you're gonna see results very quickly, and you're gonna realize how much more comfortable you're becoming coding in front of other people. Another big telltale sign that you're not ready to become a full-time software engineer is if you genuinely have no experience and you also have no projects that you've worked on, right? You've learned a language, maybe you did a JavaScript tutorial online, you watched some YouTube videos, maybe even bought a course on a certain language, but you really have no projects that you've built yourself and you have no experience in the workplace. I would recommend, if you find yourself in this kind of situation, before you really start applying to jobs, first and foremost, if you're going to start applying to jobs with no experience or projects, you're not going to get a single interview, right? So before you start applying to jobs, I would recommend really taking time, building some side projects. And the best way to do that is to kind of make a plan and see it through. You're not gonna be able to build like a Facebook overnight, especially if you're just starting to learn how to code, right? You want to start with very simple projects, maybe do one project a week, and then kind of snowball that into more complex projects that you're gonna be able to put on your resume and talk about during an interview, right? Even if you have no experience, but you have a couple of side projects, I think you will definitely be able to get interviews and talk about them, talk about the problems you've solved, the techs you've used, and you're going to be successful. Another big sign that you're not ready to become a full-time software engineer is that if you don't know how to debug. If you don't know how to debug your code, how to solve a problem that's not a high-level problem in your code, right? How you have to get down to the nitty-gritty and use different tools to debug your code. If you can't do that, then I would definitely practice. And what's the best way to practice debugging is to build a side project. You're going to run into bugs, and then you're going to have to debug them anyways, right? There's a common theme here that if you're constantly coding and building different side projects, it only has positive effects on your job prospects, right, guys? So if you really haven't taken the time to build a couple of side projects, I definitely would recommend doing that. One thing that I forgot to mention is that when you're building side projects, you want to make them complex and you want to apply them, you want to make them similar to real world projects, right? So what that means is you want to use a database, you want to use endpoints, you want to use a server, right? Host your project on AWS, host it in the cloud, and show that you are able to use real world technologies, that you're not just able to make like to-do app on your phone, but that you can use servers, you can use databases, that you're able to make a real world application that real people are going to use, right? Maybe integrate like something like Stripe where people can pay, and use different third-party apps to show that, okay, look, I made a real product that uses a lot of different technologies that a lot of big companies use, and that you're probably going to use when you become a full-time software engineer, and that'll really help you out. So guys, I hope you've enjoyed the video. If you like the content, feel free to like and subscribe. If you think there's anything I missed, feel free to leave a comment below. And as always, guys, have a good day. Thanks for watching.